Hello, this is Nick here from Gorgon Reviews, and I'm speaking with Sudeshna Sen, director of the film Anu, which is having its world premiere on Sunday, May 14th at the Seattle International Film Festival, and then playing the next day as well. Anu is about a 12-year-old grieving a loss for a recently passed grandfather and believing he may come back as a holy reincarnation of Siddhartha. Thank you so much for spending time here on this Friday.
Hi, Nick. Very nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to ask questions about a lot about you and then some about the movie, I guess, technically.
Sounds great.
What's the first movie you remember seeing in theaters?
Oh, tough one. Um, How Green Was My Valley? That was, I'm pretty sure it's either that or Born Free. I'll have to ask my mom. Because, yeah, I distinctly remember seeing Born Free in the theater, and I was pretty young. And then I saw How Green Was My Valley on a black and white TV, the first TV that my parents bought way back. And just cannot forget those two films, but that's probably those two. That
Awesome.
dates me too, yeah.
What drew you into wanting to write, direct, and produce films?
So I'm a storyteller. I've always been a literature student, and I used to teach literature and film. And so I actually started this by looking at it as a film teacher, as analyzing film, as looking at techniques of different directors and what works, and studying it more than actually doing it. And that's sort of what drew me into this. I was getting bored with teaching, but also I was very excited to see if I could try some of the techniques that I was watching on screen, if I could try and adapt them and do something with them. And that's what got me out into the field. And I took some screenwriting classes, obviously, because I had no idea how to write a screenplay. I was very good at writing pedantic stuff that nobody would ever want to read, but I didn't know how to write a screenplay. And so I took a class, and then I learned a lot. And then I made my first short, which was in 2013, I think, or 2014, called Julia's Farm. And that one it's actually a true crime story. It's taken from the FBI files. And long story short, I made that, and that was probably the best experience one can have. Of you learn by doing, and you learn what works on paper doesn't always necessarily translate onto the screen. And even in my head as a director, I might have all these grand plans of, oh, I'm going to shoot this chase scene, and depending on the budget or where you are and who you're working with, that might not always be a realistic or even a good choice. So yeah, it was very interesting. So that's where I started.
How long were you teaching?
Oh, I can't remember. I did a
Long
doctorate
enough.
in long enough. Yes, I did a doctorate in Japanese literature from University of Oregon. Go Ducks. So anyway, that was yes, that was a different a lifetime ago. And but the through line is, of course, that I've always been interested in visual culture. My PhD is actually in literature and visual culture, and it's just a different kind. When I say visual culture for Japan, I was studying scrolls and classical Japan. So that was their version of the movies, but I sort of modernized my way of doing it. But that's my overlap.
Your short film Mindy premiered at SIFF a few years ago, and you had already made a couple short films before that, like a farm one. Can you talk about that experience, how it helped you in terms of your career and just dealing with the SIFF community?
Oh, yes, I love talking about Mendi. Yeah, so Mendi was the first short I made that was about the Indian American community. It was the first story I wrote that was specifically that I wanted to talk about my take on what it means to be an immigrant, to be a South Asian American, to have a foot in multiple cultures, and what the evolution of cultural identity and personal identity. Because I believe very strongly that we are none of us. Sorry, hi, did I lose you, Nick?
No, I can still see you.
Okay, good. Because my computer did something, and it just does its own thing. Anyway, so I believe very strongly that I'm trying to find my. I'm glad you can still see me because I can't see you anymore. I don't know what happened. That's okay. I believe very strongly that we are all multiple. There are multiple facets of us. We're never just one thing. And so Mendy was my attempt at capturing what it feels like to be a gay Indian American teenager and to come out to yourself and to the person, your object of your affections, in the backdrop of an Indian wedding, a bridal shower. Because these things are always fraught. There is, whenever you have a wedding, no matter what cultural background it is, it has multiple undercurrents. And then to throw in, oh, I'm going to come out to myself, it just makes it very interesting. So Mendy was only 4 minutes long, and it was extremely well received everywhere. So I was very surprised how well it did. So our world premiere was at SIF in 2018. And then it went to so many festivals, like easily over 20, 30, I'd say. And it's, for a film that's only 4 minutes long, I thought that was a fantastic run. And I liked the thing that stood out to me is that whether it was a South Asian Film Festival, whether at SIF and every other festival, people loved the story. People loved the feeling that it evoked in them. And seeing that audience reaction, and specifically at SIF, because that was the first, that was my first festival for that film. And it was incredible. It was just such a rush when people react to something that you wrote and made, and they are loving it. And I think that's kind of where the seeds of Anu was born, honestly. I think that seeing that reaction, I thought, okay, people should really see more South Asian American stories of what it is like to be, as a member of that community, what it is like to have a foot in India. Because, I'm still very much, my mother lives in India. I'm still very much, grounded in that cultural and traditional, what's the word? Like I'm moored to that. But I've lived in Seattle specifically for 20 years. And so I consider myself very much a Seattleite, a Pacific Northwesterner, all of that. And so to have all those elements and then have something that's deeply personal and, in this case, deeply traumatic, to express that. So I wanted to take on all of that. So that's where Anu was born. I would say when I wrote Mendy in 2018, when it came, well, I wrote it earlier, but it premiered in 2018. I was thinking that I wanted to tell more stories, and I was definitely planning on doing a feature. I had just started writing the script for Anu, so it was I think April of 2018. In fact, we're actually coming pretty much full circle. That's when I started writing the story, and. It was funny because I just read, and cut me off if I'm going too long because I love talking about this. I found the book and I read it in one sitting, and that was to me I was like, if I like this book so much, I have to. This is a good sign, So so that's where I started writing this screenplay, and then it sort of just took on a life of its own, and then took over the next 5 years of my life.
That's all actually good because my follow-up question was about that, like. When you decided to make a movie based on the book, was it when you first read it in April 2018?
Yes. So I read the book
away?
a little. Yeah. I read the book a little before that. Trying to remember, but yeah, the April 2018, because I was trying to pinpoint, like exactly how long I've been working on this. And April 2018. There we are. I'm back on my screen again. Thank you. April 2018 is when I wrote the first version of the screenplay, and it took it takes a while, right? It took me a few more months of like writing it, rewriting it, tweaking it. And people who work with me know I'm an obsessive, like I love tweaking things. It's never, I'm very rarely do I write something and I say, okay, it's done. In fact, I don't think I've ever said it. So so it took me a while to get it to the point where I was ready to show it to people and say, hey, can you read this? And what do you think? And so I sent it out to some of my filmmaker friends, many of whom actually, Seattle is pretty small in terms of a film community. So we all constantly work with each other, ask each other for help and collaborate. And so, I reached out to all the local directors and writers and say, what do you think? And they gave me wonderful feedback. And I love it because, I tell them, don't be sweet, don't sugarcoat it, have at it. And so that helped develop and enrich the screenplay. And yeah, and I think we actually, it was hilarious because we actually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to find a producer and crew and try to raise some money for this and actually try and make this film. And I think that point, I might need to calculate this carefully, but it was around March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you remember,
Typically, yeah.
March of 2020 is when things took a very interesting turn. So yeah, it was yeah. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was like 2019 was spent mostly in fundraising,
Mm-hmm.
and early 2020 we were like, okay, I think we're ready. Let's hire crew, let's audition actors, and let's make this. And we were fully cast June of 2020. The plan was to shoot it that summer.
Mm-hmm.
And and my line producer Susan LaSalle, we were talking nonstop, and so we're like, okay, I know this is a lockdown, but it's going to be a few weeks, and I mean, then it'll get lifted, and then we can go back to work. And like famous last words. So anyway,
How involved was the author in the making of the film? Was she at all?
and not in the making. So Anjali is she read the screenplay. So when I optioned the book, I was very upfront that the book is hers, the screenplay is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so we understood that, and she respected that, and she's lovely. I love talking to her, but I wanted her to know what we are doing because it is her book. And so she read one of the later drafts of the script. I mean, I was like, what's the point of giving her an early one?
Yeah.
So I think we went into production July of 2021. I would say fall of 2020 or early 2021, somewhere there, when we were still not quite sure when we were going to shoot it, but I knew that we were definitely going to shoot it at some point. I showed her the script and I asked her, what do you think? And do you have suggestions? And I think, yeah, because I remember her comments were like, this is great, you're making me all teary-eyed. And anyway, so it was great working, But I'll say, yeah, she didn't have a lot of say in the script. That's pretty much just me. And I take full responsibility for all the parts in the script that if it doesn't work. But she definitely read that. I wanted to make sure that she read the script.
And I saw on her website when I was doing a little bit of research, she just showed the trailer and was like, it's premiering on this date. Everybody go buy tickets. So I know she's excited about it.
Oh, we're so excited. Yes. It's this has been something that Anjali and I have talked about on the phone for about 5 years. So yes.
One of my favorite aspects of the main character was that I was showing a teenage girl processing grief, going through a new environment to her, and making bad decisions as well because of all these things. So it made her feel pretty real from these aspects, because usually in these type of movies, a minority group member might be seen as more perfect due to fear of stereotypes or whatever on the community, but she felt like a real girl. But what was your favorite part about directing Anu from your point of view?
Oh, everything. Anu, the whole aspect, it was amazing. And so our lead actor, Diya Modi, is just phenomenal. I mean, you've seen, she's a tremendous actress. And here, this is the part you're not going to believe. This is her first feature film. She just dominated. She's just like a natural fit. And I honestly, we'll be here for a very long time if I just talk about her. But it was wonderful to work with somebody who's so young, who's so talented and so dedicated, and who just sort of, just took to the role. Like we didn't actually, because of the pandemic, we did a few Zoom sessions, but we didn't have in fact, we had no rehearsal time. So one-on-one in-person interactions were very limited, and there was a lot of health and safety regulations, as there should be. So it was difficult. But Dia just dealt with everything, took it all in stride, and she just made it her own. And the thing that, as you said, this girl's character. So this is one of the things I changed in the book. Anu is a boy. And I deliberately changed it. And this is something I told Anjali, that are you okay with this? Because I would like to make Anu a girl. And the reason I did that is because, as a female director, I really think we need to see more female-centered narratives, more female-centered stories. But personally speaking, I want to see more women of color, be the heart and soul of a story, be the focal point of a film. And so I wanted to see this girl on screen, and Dia was just the perfect actor for that role. And the other thing I wanted to do, and like you said, she is not perfect. She makes dumb decisions. And I wanted it to be like, this is what middle schoolers do. You know, she's on the one hand extremely resourceful and very determined. Like, she's got to be in her bonnet and she's going to work on it, and nobody's going to stop her. On the other hand, she's in the story, she's about 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for a 12-year-old, that they're going to make decisions that make sense for that age. So they're not always the best ones, but the reason why, you know, like everything, like I always ask myself, why would somebody do something, right? When I'm writing a screenplay, I'm writing a character, it's always like, you know, who is this person needs to feel real to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm glad it felt real to you, because it's like, the reason she is doing all of this is because nobody is listening to her. All the adults around her are not listening to her. They're not paying attention. They're telling her all the platitudes that we normally, you know, we mouth. But so there are a couple of things that were like my guiding principles, both when I was writing the story, but also when I was making the film. And the biggest one was that it is super important, I think, that we take children's pain seriously, and that we, you know, the young adults, I think, are very complex human beings, you know, and it's important to not trivialize their pain, not, you know, treat it as just not talk down to them, because they may not, sometimes they don't have the language to express the things that they're feeling inside, that's going on in their heart and their head. But I think we've got to treat their pain and emotions with the same seriousness that we give to our own adult experiences. And so that was one of the things I wanted to do, that make sure that, you know, the characters might have conflict, but as the director, I want to be sure what it is that I want to spotlight. And so that was one of them. The other thing, and again, this is something that I wrote this before the pandemic, but once the pandemic happened, I was thinking, like, this is really dark humor, but I'm like, you know, the silver lining is this story is actually exactly the kind of thing I would like to see now, because we need to know that the pain ends, you know, that it is okay to talk about your pain. It is okay to talk about your vulnerability, that it is going to pass, that there is hope, and then there is renewal, that things get better. And so this film, the whole arc, Anu's arc, basically is that reassure, like, she's seeking something that's outside of her, and then she finally discovers that it is actually in her, inside her. And that whole arc of that, getting that reassurance that she's going to be okay, that, you know, that she's lost someone, that she was so terrified that she would never ever have any connection with this love and this, you know, this figure. But then something, you know, that reassurance that comes to her at the end, that it's going to be okay. And I think we all need that, no matter what age and who we are. We all need that reassurance that it's going to be okay. So that was those were some of the things that I really wanted to focus on while we were making this. And sorry if I strayed from your original question. I get chatty. So.
Interviews are a lot easier with big detailed answers.
Thank you so much.
You're the expert here. No, but here is the final question, I guess. Since Anu is an adaptation of another person's story, do you have plans to tell your own stories in the future films?
So many. I'm actually writing a script right now that's mine. And you know, I usually write my own stories, so Anu is actually the first one that I adapted. But yeah, I love writing stories. To me, it's the one thing that I get up in the morning and I'm, you know, totally immersed in. And sadly, for those people who are around me, my friends, family, everyone, they get to be a part of it. I put them in there. I talk to them about it. I run ideas. I ask them random questions like, hey, what would happen to you if, you know, so and so thing happened? And they'd be like, okay, that was kind of random. Where is this coming from? But yeah, I'm writing my next script, and I'm excited. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, once again, thank you for spending your time with me answering some questions about Anu and directing and writing. Anu again premieres Sunday, May 14th at SIFF, and then again the following Monday, May 15th. And I think it's also on the virtual channel. And I forgot afterwards if you can't go to the premiere. Thanks so much, and hope to see your future films at SIFF too. Seems to be your favorite festival.
Thank you so much, Nick. I do adore SIFF. SIFF is fantastic.